So I'll talk about the tokenomics.
Agents have been very relevant. They continue to be relevant, but we've recently seen MCP really gaining attraction.
The Korean people are really into OpenLedger, and I think that's the reason why you are interested in the Korean market. So is there anything to say for the Korean users or something? 네, 안녕하십니까 블록미디어 시청자 여러분. 최근에 시장이 많이 안 좋지만 그래도 여러 가지 블록체인 프로젝트들이 이제 시장에서 빌딩을 하고 있는데요. 그 중에서도 AI 관련 분야가 그래도 나중에 괜찮아지지 않을까라고 저는 개인적으로 생각하고 있습니다. 그 중에서도 AI 쪽에서 빌딩을 하고 있는 오픈레저라는 프로젝트에 대해서 알아보도록 하겠습니다. 오늘은 오픈레저의 파운더를 모시고 인터뷰를 진행해 보도록 하겠습니다. Hello, how are you doing?
Hey man, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. So could you introduce about yourself and what kind of project OpenLedger is?
Yeah, I'm Ram. I'm one of the core contributors at OpenLedger. OpenLedger is a blockchain network for AI. We enable people to collaborate with data and build specialized AI models. It's a layer 2 built on OP Stack. We settle on ETH.
OP Stack.
OP Stack. And we enable people to come together and build models on top of this. And attribution is one of the key focus for us. We want to make sure anyone who contributes data sets to these models get rewarded for that. So that's our core aspects, and that's what the layer 2 concentrates on. That's why it's on chain. So we've been in the space for over a year. We launched last year around April. We've raised about $11 million till now, and Polychain Capital led our round, and we have other prominent investors like Waterless Capital and many more other investors like Hashkey, who was one of the sponsors here, and a couple more as well. So we've been quite active in the space. We have close to about 1 million plus nodes that provide data sets to us. These are users across the globe. We do have a significant number of users in Korea who participate in our program and provide data sets as well. We have close to about 10 plus projects building specialized models on top of us, and these are projects as part of the community who's building on our testnet. We could talk more about that. So that's sort of like the quick run through about what we're doing.
So do you think there are some problems in the AI space since you are building OpenLedger maybe?
Yeah.
And could you speak more of those problems and how you are solving those kind of problems?
Yeah, so if you take a look at the AI space, right, there are 3 components that usually people look at. One is compute, another one is data, and sort of like algorithms. Algorithms is where usually models and all that come into place, right? So compute is pretty much solved in terms of the need for compute. I think there is going to be less need for training-based compute. There will be more need for inference-based compute. The existing compute players are good enough to solve for that, right? So there are the other 2 sectors of AI which need a lot of problems to be solved, which is data and algorithm on the model side. We concentrate more on the data on the model side. So if we take a look at it, right, larger language models, which are llama, DeepSeek, and OpenAI and all that, these are trained on internet data that you find on internet, data which is easily accessible, have been used to train these models. People have been trying to solve on the data side where they provide better data sets to build better foundation models, but there is a niche for specialized models which are verticalized and specialized for a particular category, right? So what I mean by that, for example, a DeepSeek model has a very generic knowledge, right? But a generic model cannot be used for every services that we might need. For example, for trading, especially in trading in crypto, it's a DeFi trading, and someone wants to build a DeFi agent. An existing larger language model doesn't have enough context to power these DeFi agents to provide a much better output or an inference for them, right? It's going to be very generic. So a DeFi agent would need a model which has much more knowledge about on-chain data, which has much more knowledge about what is happening in the market right now, which is like macro conditions and micro conditions as well. So they would need that constant data feed or constant information from the market that kind of suffices this, right? So that's one niche area that I think a lot of people are concentrating on. But as I told you, larger language models are not good enough for that. We need models which are specialized for this. A model that understands on-chain data, that has trained on a lot of on-chain based information, on-chain data sets, that has been trained on off-chain sentiments. Overall, crypto has been an industry over the last 12 years, 13 years. How can we have this particular model with the knowledge about what was the history of Bitcoin, what was the history of all coins, how it came about, what does Bitcoin halving mean? What does a macro condition mean for crypto? So all this kind of stuff has to be trained into a model. Even though it's not going to be done for like a foundation model, the foundation model has to be taken and we have to superimpose with all these kind of features. It has to be fine-tuned, post-trained and made specialized for this particular category. So that is what we enable. We enable people to build models, take larger language model, customize them for their own need, add more data sets and make it specialized. It's like how a human is. You're a person, you're trained in media, right? Yeah. We all did undergrad today. We all did schooling. Schooling is sort of like our general knowledge, and we specialize ourselves in various professions that we want to get in. Very similarly, models have to be specialized in a category that we want it to be useful for, right? A generic model cannot be useful for every category. Yes. That is what OpenLedger enables. So for this, you need an infrastructure where people can collect data sets. Collecting data sets and using data sets to train these models is a very significant part of what we do. So the first part is to enable people to collect data sets on us, collect information from across the globe. It could be, let's say it's a DeFi model, we need a lot of off-chain sentiment data, we need a lot of on-chain data to be labeled. Yes. So we provide a platform where people can collect and execute that. We can collect these data sets. And then once these models are going to be trained, once the data sets have been collected, model developers use these data sets to fine-tune these models, to train these models, customize it as per their need. In this case, they're going to customize it as a DeFi model. And then once this model is trained on us, then we let them host on a platform so that agents and humans and anyone can go ahead, chat with it, or agents can call the API and execute that and use these models. That's simple. So collecting data sets, training models, hosting these models on top of us, and then letting agents to be used. And once these models get monetized, when people use these models, they're paying for this model, right? Okay. We want to make sure the reward, the payment, the revenue that comes to these models is shared with the data contributors. Because data is the one which made this model specialized. Before that, it was a generic model. You collected data sets to fine-tune and make it specialized. So the data providers have to be benefited out of this, right? So every time a model gets used, on that inference, on the output, we figure out which data cost that output to come, and we use that to reward back to the data contributors. Our layer 2 is implemented for that. So the data is on-chain, data's hash is on-chain, the model that used this data, the version of the model is on-chain, the model's usage is on-chain. So we track that usage and then reward back users on-chain as well. So you can have an end-to-end verifiability of which one who provided data, which model used that, and how much it got paid, and if they're getting paid for, you can check basically the end-to-end of that. So that's pretty much what we are trying to solve.
I think you explained about everything about OpenLedger, and what I understood is about it's like people can use Dune on your maybe those kinds of on-chain data. Just asking the AI models and the data contributors can get some.
That's one of the use cases. We are a general purpose infrastructure for AI. So someone can build a healthcare model on top of us. They could collect data sets. It could be anything. It could be a model specific for media, right? So stuff like that.
So when I saw about your docs and those kind of stuff, I saw things about data nets. So could you explain more about data nets and why are they critical for OpenLedger's operations, maybe?
So as we were walking through about the model development, right? So the first integral part of it is to collect data sets.
Yes.
And when you want to collect data sets, you want to make sure that you have the right data sets that's been collected. Model developers would require an infrastructure in which they can have a rule on what kind of data sets has been contributed, right? Data nets, think of to be like a contract layer on which model developers can implement a rule engine on contract, on chain, of what kind of data sets has to be contributed so that they can use that to train models. So that's the first phase. That's sort of like the entry to OpenLedger. So this is where people go ahead and figure out which model that they want to participate for, contribute data, and check their data net, see the rule engine that is written, and then contribute data sets for that. So this is the preliminary step to start and enable people to fine-tune models. So we go the demand route than the supply route. We don't want to collect all kinds of data in our platform. We would like to have the model developers, the community, to figure out which model has demand. So we let models to be proposed first, and then we let them have a rule engine to be written for data collection in the data net. And then based on the model that is being developed, people contribute data sets to this data net.
Okay. Thanks for the data, Net, and I want to learn more about the other part of OpenLedger, which is like, can you explain the proof of like attribution mechanism and how it can benefit to the data contributors maybe? Because people are really into how they can get some rewards for the data. Those kind of things, and
So
what they can get.
Yeah, as we spoke about, right, we want to cover the end-to-end process of a model development. If you want to enable community to come together and build models, you want to make sure there is reward for them, right? That's what incentivizes people to contribute data. If I'm going to get paid for it, I'm happy to share my data,
Yes.
be part of the process, right? So attribution is very key. You could pay people upfront for the data that they provide, but you're not able to figure out the right price, right? Price discovery doesn't happen. Price discovery happens when your data is useful and you're able to meter what kind of usefulness of your data is, and you fairly get rewarded out of that, right? So when a model gets developed and model gets used using a platform, and an agent, let's say, goes and infers on a model, we figure out on that inference. Every time an agent asks a question to a model and there is an answer, the inference, on that inference we figure out which data cost that inference to happen. Which data set out of the 100,000 data sets probably cost that was used to build these models. We could tap in to figure out, like, these top data sets had the biggest impact on this inference, and we plot that out on chain. We show it on chain that these are the data sets that caused this inference to happen, and then we use that to reward the data contributors. So it's on chain, and once attribution is done, model developers can split their revenue from every inference and reward back to the data contributors.
I think that's what people really want to know about the contribution for the data. And so also, I want to know, how does OpenLedger's model factory simplify the fine-tuning process for specialized AI models like what people make or LLMs?
Yeah, so we spoke about data collection, we spoke about attribution, rewarding. This is the middle piece. This is where all the fun happens. People can collect data sets and experiment and build models on us. We wanted to make sure that the model development is as easy as possible, right? If you go to a platform, let's say like Hugging Face or Kaggle, they don't provide you toolkits for like fine-tuning. Kaggle does that. Kaggle, in fact, lets you actually have an ML engineer participate in like competitions and stuff like that. But that's more code-based, right? It's not a no-code platform. You need to know ML engineering to actually fine-tune, like build models on them. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible. So we implemented Model Factory, which is a LoRa fine-tuning based no-code platform. So the data sets that you collect, model developers can basically train these data sets on top of any open source model and fine-tune them using Model Factory. So it's a no-code platform. They choose the data set they want. They choose the base model that they're going for, set the hyperparameters, and start training using our platform. And once they start training these models, post-train basically, this is basically a fine-tuning this model with more data sets using LoRa fine-tuning. Once the model is trained, you can evaluate the model within the same platform, see whether it actually throws the right outputs. If not, go back and train again. So it's an iterative process where people collect data sets, build models, evaluate that. If it doesn't work out, train again, and then go to a process and actually
I can
launch.
even make it maybe?
You can do that, yeah.
Really?
So as long as
So it's an easy one?
Yes, it's pretty easy. As long as you have some knowledge about programming, you have some knowledge about ML, you could do that. We're going to have a version of this which is much more simpler, where anyone who has an interest doesn't have to have any programming knowledge. They could go ahead and have like basic rules set and then actually train models as well.
So your plan is to expand it to the
Expand it much more user base as well. But initially, it's good enough for if you have a basic knowledge about model development and ML engineering, you'll be able to handle the platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you talked about OpenLoRa before in the question. So could you explain more about OpenLoRa and how does it optimize resource usage for deploying AI models?
So we spoke about data collection,
Yes.
model development, and then we spoke about attribution, which is rewarding.
Yes.
The important piece over here is the deployment part of the model. So you've collected data, you've built a model, now you need to deploy this model, right? You need to like basically run this model on a GPU, right? While you're deploying a model, the biggest challenge over here is the GPU cost, right?
Oh, yes.
GPU's cost are extraordinary. Like, if you take a look at it, we were paying about $7 an hour for a GPU that was consumed from one of the centralized players like Amazon and all that. And then we started working with a lot of decentralized compute providers like Ather, where they provided us with $1 per hour cost for GPU because it is decentralized compute, right? But we wanted to go one step much further, make sure the deployment cost is much lower. Where if you take a look at, if you're building a model, a specialized model, you need one GPU to launch your specialized model, one single GPU to launch your entire model. What if we could have it modularized? Because all of these specialized models have the base model as same. Everything is a Llama model or a DeepSeek model that is being used. And the data set is fine-tuned on top of this, right? So it becomes a specialized model where you add more information, fine-tune. The stack becomes a specialized model now. So what you've done is basically on OpenLoRa, you have the base model available, which is Llama or DeepSeek. The specialized model layer, the LoRa layer is like an adapter. The data set that you've added and you trained, right? That's a LoRa adapter, which is available separately in our platform. So once you do the training, the base model and the LoRa adapters are available for you separately, and then you can deploy them on OpenLoRa. So where you deploy the base model, and then you call all the adapters in real time. Basically, all the LoRa adapters in real time. So if someone looks for, let's say, a specialized model in DeFi, the base model is deployed in a GPU. That's where the request comes in, and then the DeFi LoRa adapter is called for, and an answer is given. Very similarly, if someone is looking for a model which is on a Solidity that has been deployed in OpenLedger, they could basically call for the OpenLedger's Solidity model, which is built by one of the builders in our platform. And the base model again is the same here. The Solidity adapter is brought in real time to give you an answer. So like this, let's say there could be like 100 different specialized models like LoRa adapters, one for Solidity, one for DeFi, one for, let's say, Move language, one for healthcare. It could be 100 different modules. All of these LoRa adapters will be called in real time whenever there's an inference request for that particular model. So it just, instead of launching 100 GPUs for 100 specialized models, you can
use
have just one GPU and then have 100 models deployed. So that's open.
Okay, I think that's very cool for that. And so I'll talk about the tokenomics for me.
Yeah.
I think I heard a lot of technical questions for you, and you talked it very easily for the retail user. So what are the economic opportunities provided by OpenLedger's model tokenization process maybe?
Yeah, so we would launch more about this soon. So our white paper will come out, and we are currently in test now. We are testnet right now. We are going mainnet soon. So the tokenomics is a very integral part of what we do, because token is always seen as an economic driver in a decentralized AI project. Because one of the reasons we started building this could be a traditional AI company, right? Whatever I said could be done in traditional AI. But what really brings all of this together is that if we want mass activity to be done, if we want a model to be built, and you want data sets for specialized models is usually not concentrated in one singular place. Let's say someone is building a model for healthcare. They need a lot of sleep data. Getting sleep data from one particular university or an institute doesn't make sense, right? Because you need as much as variations as possible, as much as biases as possible from across the globe. And one of the reasons we wanted them to use crypto is to enable rewarding across the globe, to reward people across the globe to contribute data sets. So the best way to do that is using crypto rails than traditional payment rails, right? So that's where our tokenomics comes into place, our token comes into place, where every time these models get used, the data contributors get rewarded using OpenLedger tokens. So that's one of the key part to us. And the other side is all of this is verifiable on chain. So you'll be able to know, as I told you, which data that you contributed was used in a model, and whether that model's output was impacted by your data set, and you'll be able to see on chain how much of that revenue from that token you're going to get rewarded for. So how much you're going to have it as a rev share. So you can see that on chain. So OpenLedger tokens is used as the reward mechanism. Apart from that, we also want to make sure that the platform is as fair as possible. We want to make it as decentralized as possible, because models will be built on us. We are not going to build the models. The community is going to build models. We want to make sure the community has enough buy-in for these models. They believe in these models. So we use we let them use OpenLedger token to vote for the models that's being built. If someone proposes a model, OpenLedger community can go ahead and hold OpenLedger tokens to stake on these models, vote on them on governance, and accept that this model can be built. So these two are one of the most integral utilities for our token. Apart from that, there are more utilities that will be announced as well, which will be shown in the white paper.
Okay, so what is the future vision of OpenLedger, and how does it plan to evolve in the AI-driven blockchain space? Also, could you tell you maybe your roadmap or those kind of things?
Yeah. So AI is a space where it's rapidly evolving every other month or so. Agents have been very relevant. They continue to be relevant, but we've recently seen MCP really gaining attraction, right? Models not really require agents in scenarios where they have to just use an agent to actually do a calling, right? They could just basically use MCP. So it's a sector that we'll be continuously watching very closely and evolve accordingly. But one thing that will remain solid is that any kind of technology that comes in, it's usually very general purpose. You need specialization that needs to be done. We all realize that the models that are there, the foundational models, will be sort of become like an OS, right?
True.
How we've seen in the industry, in technology industry, it always comes out to be very generic. Like Google search is very generic, and then you had searches for every particular category, and basically always there are platforms which are built for technology as a general purpose because people can envision something as a general purpose, and then specialization comes to it because of the need that is there. So specialized models will always be a need. There will be some sort of specialization that you would be needing. A model cannot have all the information in the world, right? Even though it has all the information in the world, you might need to provide much more context to it for it to be an expert. We all know math, we all know calculus, but if you give me a math problem right now using calculus, I would not be able to solve that.
Yes.
But if you give me a month's time, I'll be probably able to get trained on it and solve it better, right? A model works very similarly. So a model might have all the knowledge, but it's not an expert in a particular field. So you need to specialize a model in a particular field. So there's always a need for specialization, and that's what we believe in. That's what we've seen over the last few years. So we will go much more deeper into this. There'll be models which will be focused towards research. There'll be models which will be focused toward particular niches. We'll be supporting them. We'll be helping them build on us. Our infrastructure currently supports data collection, model development, and then deployment as well. We will also expand into other areas like evaluation. We'll also expand into various other features that might require for model development to be easier. So that is our roadmap. Our product is currently in testnet right now.
Yes.
We are going mainnet probably 1 to 2 months time. We are getting feedback from the community and constantly working on to make sure the product is built for the community. That's the process right now. And the major concentration right now is just getting feedback and making sure that we saw the product accordingly.
So I heard that a lot of Korean users are really using your testnet, and a lot of people are on your testnet. So why do you think the Korean people are really into OpenLedger? And I think that's the reason why you are interested in the Korean market. So is there anything to say for the Korean users or something?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we have a lot of Korean audience in our platform. The idea is to be a global platform, and Korea is a significant player in the Web3 space. We would love to have a lot of data sets that's been contributed from the Korean market. There have been people who've been exploring building models, especially in the regions of Asia. So we would love to have the Korean market and the community participate as well. We would like to also figure out ways where we can expand into regions very locally, where we can enable models built for that particular region.
So it's specialized
for that particular region. Because see, one important factor that I've spoken to multiple people in the AI space, especially people who are building like foundation models. Foundation models, as we know, have very generic knowledge, right? So it's not very culturally bound. It has a very generic cultural knowledge. So they would like to have a lot of cultural context given to these models, right? A model that is being used for healthcare or mental health cannot be the same model that can be used in the Western region and compared to in the Asian region as well. And even in Asia, the culture is a bit different. So after a point of time, we would love to encourage the community to build models which are very localized, very region specific as well, and especially languages. Like if you take a look at languages, it's very dialect driven. Certain languages, certain indigenous languages, not many people know about it. So we would love to work with a lot of communities, including the Korean communities, to build models which are very local and specialized to that particular region as well. So once we go mainnet, looking forward for more projects like this.
Okay, thank you so much for the interview today, and thank you for coming for our booth and
Absolutely, it was great talking to you
It's great
guys.
to meet you. 네, 안녕하세요, 블록미디어 구독자 여러분. 오늘은 이제 오픈레저의 파운더인 람과 함께 오픈레저가 무엇인지 그리고 어떤 비전을 갖고 있는지에 대해서 알아봤습니다. 이렇게 특화된 AI 모델을 위한 이런 블록체인을 만들고 있는데요. 여러분들의 생각은 어떠신지 댓글 남겨주시고 좋아요와 구독도 부탁드리겠습니다. 감사합니다. 바이.